Death Mage Chapter 105, A Person Who Won't Be Escorted. 4 carriages were moving along a highway in the former Sauron Duchy. The carriages at the front and back were packed with mercenaries, and the coachmen of these carriages were mercenaries as well. There were also more mercenaries on horseback surrounding the carriages, further strengthening their defense. And the 2 carriages in the middle were loaded with goods.
Really, the world has become a nice place.
The leader of this group, Page Chapter, had a cheerful smile on his face, paying no attention to the strict atmosphere.
Rumor has it that this region's name will be formally changed soon. Oh my, what a happy event. With this, the Amid Empire's rule will become firm.
Is it really all right to say that, Dana? Aren't you a pure-blooded citizen of the kingdom?
He asked, was it all right for Page to be so happy when his own nation, his birthplace, had been occupied and was now being ruled by an enemy nation? But Page's smile did not falter despite this question.
Of course.
He said,
which nation I was born in does not matter. I am a merchant. I love anything that grants opportunities for profit. And the Amid Empire will bring more profits to my business than the Orbom Kingdom. Please look at the commodities behind us.
Page pointed at the 2nd and 3rd carriages. Each of them were carrying over a dozen people.
This quantity and quality would have been unimaginable in the kingdom.
They were slaves. Expensive slave collars hadn't been put around their necks, but there were sturdy shackles around their wrists and ankles instead. Page Chapter was a slave trader. But slaves were allowed even in the Orbom Kingdom. So why was he making more profits under the Amid Empire's occupation? The reason for this was the races of the slaves. The slaves in the carriages were beast people, titans, dark elves, half-elves, and there was even a draconid among them. All of them were members of Vita's races, or those who shared their blood. In the Amid Empire, the treatment of slaves of races considered to be people humans, elves, and dwarves was strictly regulated. However, members of Vita's races and those who shared their blood were discriminated against. Their treatment was essentially unrestricted. Page had noticed this. He was gathering members of Vita's races in the Sauron Duchy and selling them as slaves.
It is true that they are attractive women and sturdy slaves that look as if they could work anywhere.
The leader of the mercenaries agreed. The carriage contained beautiful women that would even make the mercenary leader himself start drooling. Sturdy men who looked as if they would be able to handle all kinds of harsh labor, and young boys who were just at the perfect age to begin teaching them work. The mercenaries were outsiders in this business other than the fighting, but they understood that there were large profits to be made if these slaves were all sold.
But didn't the magistrate Sama announce that the emperor would keep the laws regarding slaves in this region as they were now for another 50 years?
Said another mercenary. As he pointed out, Emperor Marshixarl had not imposed the Empire's discriminatory system in the Sauron Duchy. This was a postponement for the citizens of the Sauron Duchy, and at the same time it was a trap. If the humans, dwarves, and elves of the Sauron Duchy were to suddenly be told that their neighbors, co-workers, lovers, spouses, and their own children were to become those who should be discriminated against, they would naturally rebel against the Empire. This could potentially cause a large-scale rebellion, and a countless number of people would try to escape into the Orbom Kingdom. But if they were to hear that things would stay the same for 50 more years, some of them would feel relief rather than a desire to rebel. For the humans in particular, who were present in the duchy in large numbers, 50 years from now was a distant future, where their children and grandchildren's generation would have already begun. Even dwarves and elves who had long lifespans might think that the system would change, or the Orbom Kingdom might retake the Sauron Duchy within 50 years. So then, wasn't it best to see how things went for now rather than doing something as dangerous as defying the Emperor? These 50 years were a long enough postponement to make the dwarves and elves think this. Doing this was effectively a measure to prevent the people of the Sauron Duchy from unifying. But despite this being intended to be a trap, the law was the law. Breaking it would, of course, lead to severe punishment.
That is why I have chosen this road with no people, hired you gentlemen as guards, and am smuggling these slaves into the boundaries of the Amid Empire, is it not? There are no military police who would begin an investigation for the sake of these poor slaves of Vida's races.
Said Page.
You're right about that. We'll deliver these goods where they need to be, Dana. So,
I know.
Said Page.
I will provide ample remunerations for your work.
no, not that.
As if pouring water on the black conversation between the slave trader and the mercenary, armed men and women with cloths covering their mouths appeared from the forest on both sides of the carriages, blocking the path ahead and behind. And then a female knight, who had a mask covering her mouth like the others, glared at Page with a sharp glint in her eye and made a declaration.
We are the Sauron Liberation Front. Page, you traitor who would even utilize the invaders to sell the people of our nation as slaves. Consider yourself a dead man.
Looking closely, some youth could be seen in the knight's face. It was that of a girl who was in her later teenage years. But the strength of her voice contained no signs of inexperience.
It's the Sauron Liberation Front.
Cried one of the mercenaries.
Mercenaries, it seems it is already time for you to work. I am counting on you.
Page shouted at the leader. His face turned pale, but he didn't lose his composure.
Yes, leave the execution to me.
The mercenary leader's face twisted in a smile as he raised his special halberd. Page wanted to ask, what are you saying? But what came from his mouth instead was his own blood. He gasped, coughed, and then collapsed with his eyes rolled back. As the mercenary leader removed his special weapon from Page's corpse, he bowed towards the female knight.
I'm finished, Arju.
He said. The other mercenaries tied up the workers that Page had hired, and then followed their leader's example, lowering their heads.
All right. Release the slaves from their shackles.
The knight ordered.
Yes, leave it to me.
The mercenaries that Page had hired were working with the female knight who led the resistance. They removed the shackles from the slaves, who were still confused by the sudden events, and the members of the resistance began wrapping cloaks around the women and children. The female knight called out to the mercenary leader, who seemed somewhat relieved.
Are you all right with this, Debais?
She asked.
Though he was indeed scum, mercenaries won't be able to survive if they betray their employers.
Hey, I don't mind.
He said.
Mercenaries are just those of us who have no choice but to do this work because we failed to die on the battlefield. Discontinuing this business might be just what we need.
And then he gave the salute that he had learned when he was a part of the Sauron Duchy's army before continuing.
We were already losers to begin with. If it means we can return to being soldiers of Sauron before we die, under Arju's flag, no less, we'll cover ourselves in as much mud as we need to.
The flag we wave is not my flag, but the flag of the Sauron family,
said the female knight.
I haven't been knighted. I'm merely the eldest daughter in a family of knights.
Though she was happy that the former subordinates of her late father were placing their hopes on her, Iris Bearheart didn't fail to remind them of this. There were several other organizations in the resistance apart from the Sauron Liberation Front that she led, and there was also the reborn Sauron Duchy army, led by Duke Sauron's illegitimate child and his younger brother. Though everyone present was an ally, it was best to avoid words and actions that could cause internal discord.
Also, the social status of my family is the lowest among those who are a part of the Liberation Front,
said Iris.
I am but a small shrine being lifted up by the others.
Iris's family was a family of knights, one of the lowest noble families that could name an heir in the Orbom Kingdom's aristocratic system. And all of the members in the Sauron Liberation Front were from families with higher court ranks than hers.
Irisaju is saying something again. Is she being sarcastic towards me, the fifth son of a baronet's family?
Who knows? Maybe she's being considerate to me,
the illegitimate child of an earl's family.
No, I am sure that she is holding back for me, a former orphan who became the adopted daughter of a marquis's family to be used for a political marriage.
Though all of these members came from such families, they were actually those who would normally never be able to succeed their families or gain significant positions, those who would have eventually become commoners unless they were adopted by another noble family or married to gain another noble surname. In the previous war, many heads of noble families, as well as the eldest and second sons who could have succeeded them, had fallen in battle or escaped to other duchies. The noblemen remaining in the Sauron region now were those who had either allied themselves with the Empire or dummy replacements, left behind bearing their names to reassure the people. And those who were not so important to the kingdom that they desperately needed to escape, and yet were individuals that the Empire could not ignore because they did indeed possess the blood of noble families, had gathered under Iris's command.
Heh, you'll just be having me, someone who's been a soldier for 3 generations, joining you, so there won't be any problems.
Said Debeyes.
That's reassuring.
Said Iris.
All right, it's about time we depart.
The resistance, whose numbers had doubled now, as well as the slaves who had now become free citizens again, cheered as they began to move with the stolen carriages. The only thing left behind was the pool of the slave traders' blood. The voice of a boy leading a somewhat sinister-looking group of individuals echoed out in the refreshing air of this clear morning.
We'll make this our camping ground.
Vandal declared. If survivalists on Earth were to hear this, they might be exasperated, wondering what kind of camping ground this was supposed to be.
Get up.
The ground surface was steadily transformed into golems, and the slope of the mountain changed into a flat, open space with a reasonable surface area. He didn't forget to transform the bedrock and boulders into stone golems as well, to form pillars that would support the flat ground. And then bones began to join together with clattering noises in this newly formed open ground. Notchin groaned as it transformed into ramparts and inhabitable buildings made of bones. The roofs were made not with tiles, but things such as the bone plates of stegosauruses and tortoise shells. The insides of the buildings were not empty. They contained tables, chairs, and beds made of bone. Rita and Saria quickly carried in the sheets and mattresses that Sam had been carrying aboard and began making the beds. Vandalyu used his golem transmutation skill to quickly dig a well, and his labyrinth construction skill to create a small dungeon for quick travel in emergency situations. Last of all, Eisen and the other immortal Ents lumbered around Notchin's surroundings, concealing the bone mansion so that it couldn't be seen from outside.
Well done, Danisama.
Said Belmond. Everything was complete after less than an hour. Everyone began to rest, drinking the tea that Belmond had prepared. With just that much time and effort, a base that was very comfortable to live in with the defenses of a sturdy fort had been created. It even had food and water available from the well and the immortal Ents, and there was an emergency escape option as well.
I'm sure it would be designated as a disaster.
Vandalyu remarked quietly, looking at Notchin, or rather, one of its skeletons, who was the core of this base. Notchin gave a curious groan. A fortress filled with countless undead had suddenly appeared in an unnoticed location. Any previously prepared precautions and defenses were useless in such a situation. And because Notchin possessed the high-speed flight skill, its mobility was incomparably superior to those of other bone forts. If it wanted to, it could go over castle walls at night and form a fortress before morning while attacking the city. It was an absolute nightmare from a defender's point of view.
Now that it comes to this, I'll have to consider that the Empire, Kingdom, and the pure-breed vampires might use similar tactics and rework Talishheim's defensive tactics.
Said Vandalyu.
Van, don't be scared, Tilda. Calm down, Tilda.
Said Povina.
Relax, Vandalyu, there's no need to be scared.
Said Darsha. The two of them were trying to calm him down now that he was feeling an irrational sense of danger and imagining things that were impossible.
Please look over here, my lord. I am managing to do this with more than usual.
Said Bone Man, who had removed his own skull and ribs and started juggling them, perhaps in an attempt to draw Vandalu's attention away from such thoughts.
Bakken, the chances of the Empire or the Kingdom throwing a monster like a bone fort onto the front lines are, well, nil.
Said Saria. There wasn't even a 1% chance. As long as Vandalu was the only one capable of taming undead, there was nobody who could manipulate monsters of the same type as a bone fort. If they were to use large plant-type monsters or special golems, it might theoretically be possible to achieve something similar, but these would just be empty theories. Even if such empty theories somehow became reality, such large plant-type monsters would likely move slower than shellfish on land, and the manufacturing cost of a moving fortress-type golem with current alchemical knowledge would cause nations to go bankrupt 10 times over.
Then what about the pure-breed vampires?
Princess Levia asked.
I do not know how much fighting strength Birken and Gubeman possess, but I do not believe that they possess a bone fort.
Said Belmond.
Is that true?
Princess Levia seemed surprised.
But I do think that Nachan-san is very convenient.
Bone forts were rare undead monsters, and only a handful of them had been historically confirmed to exist, but Birken and Gubeman had been alive since the Age of the Gods. As they were capable of taming undead, it wouldn't have been strange for them to set their sights on bone forts. That was what Princess Levia had thought, but Belmond shook her head.
Princess, you mustn't use Danasama as a standard.
She said,
They are capable of taming undead, but they are only capable of controlling undead that they have created themselves using corpses as materials. They are unable to tame undead that already move and exist. Thus, if they wish to possess a bone fort, they would need to create one, but gathering such a number of bones would be truly difficult, in every sense of the word.
And after they gathered the materials, they would need to perform a ritual to turn them into an undead, so this would take a considerable amount of time.
Can they not steadily develop from rank 1 living bones?
Vandalu asked.
I do not believe that they did this.
Said Belmond.
If they wanted more fighting forces, increasing the numbers of subordinate vampires would suffice. And Danasama, the majority of undead are not as intelligent as Nachan Dono and Bone Man Dono.
In other words, even after taking the effort to raise them, they would be left with undead who would only be able to obey simple commands like, fight and stay here.
And they are not managing a nation, or a large-scale mercenary band to begin with.
Belmond continued.
They are a type of criminal organization. They do not even have any need to directly fight an enemy army.
The pure-breed vampires who worshipped evil gods had survived up until now by spreading their roots beneath society. Thus, it was apparently unnecessary for them to conduct large-scale battles such as wars on their own. To begin with, pure-breed vampires and high-ranking noble-born vampires each possessed enough fighting strength to scatter the army of a single nation. As they had no civilians that they needed to protect, just one or perhaps a few of them would need to go on a rampage or simply escape.
Then what about the evil gods?
Vandalu asked.
The evil gods, you ask? My knowledge does not extend that far.
Belmond said, unable to answer his question. However, Vandalu and his companions would one day do battle with the evil gods, including Hihirushukaka, the evil god of joyful life, the one who had given Gubeman and the other 2 pure-breed vampires his divine protection. As long as this fact remained true, they needed countermeasures against these enemies.
Well, even if I want to come up with countermeasures, I can't come up with anything other than defeating them through sheer force, so let's prepare while trying to think of new ideas.
Said Vandalu.
My apologies, I have failed to convince him.
Said Belmond.
That's not true, Belmond-san.
Said Darsha.
You did well.
Jua, there is nothing to apologize for.
Said Bone Man.
My lord has returned to normal, after all.
Nachan groaned in agreement. As Vandalu watched everyone thank Belmond for her efforts, he wondered whether he was overthinking things, but he reconsidered and decided that it would be best to make preparations while not doing anything unreasonable. It was thanks to Vandalu's persecutory delusions that Talishheim's defenses had been increased to this extent. Now then, we'll be going now. Everyone, if bandits or Empire soldiers come, and you can stop them from passing, please dispose of them. The same goes for the vampires who work for the evil gods. But you mustn't lay a hand on the people of the resistance. If they look like they will die, please help them. With these words, Vandeleu left his camp along with his companions. The first objective was to make contact with the Scylla, but first he had to gather nearby spirits to gain information. That was why they were going for a little walk around the area first.
Well, I don't have high hopes for this.
Vandeleu said, "In these nature-filled mountains and hills, there were countless forms of life, and the air was restless with countless spirits appearing and disappearing. These spirits were very convenient for making golems. However, it was difficult to say that they were useful as a source of information. The spirits of plants were insensitive to their surroundings, and Vandeleu didn't expect much from the spirits of insects either. Animals would know a few things about the areas that their territories encompassed. Birds were the most promising, as they had good eyes and lived over wide areas. But the spirits of such wild animals lost memories from when they were alive very quickly, and the vast majority of them lasted less than a year before returning to the circle of transmigration. Thus, the only reliable ones were the spirits of intelligent creatures such as people or monsters. But this was simply a nature-filled mountain in the middle of nowhere. There weren't even any signs of battle having taken place here, so it was unlikely that there would be spirits of people here. Therefore, the spirits of monsters should have been the ones to look for, but
I wonder if there are any goblins or something,"
said Vandeleu.
Despite the fact that we are trying to find them, there aren't any, are there?
Said Princess Levia.
There really aren't any.
Said Povina. The three of them were going along a mountain path, searching for monsters that could be used as sources of information, but this seemed to be a more peaceful mountain than they had thought. There wasn't a single trace of a goblin, despite the fact that goblins were monsters that could be found anywhere. Though it was entirely possible that they had simply fled in fear of the Titan ghost, who was over 2 meters tall, and the enormous little girl.
This would be a relative success if we were just watching the autumn leaves fall, though.
Said Vandeleu. The trees here were separated by generous amounts of space, and the sunlight filtering through the leaves was very beautiful. There were no red leaves and few autumn colors, but it was not a bad view at all.
What are we hunting? Are Mamaji's monsters?
Povina asked. Povina had made a common misunderstanding for children first hearing about watching autumn leaves fall, so Vandeleu went to correct her, but Princess Levia responded first.
They are deer-type monsters.
She said,
It was written on stone tablets that deer meat is called umamaji. This is correct, isn't it?
Yes, they're deer.
Said Vandeleu. It was another world, so there wouldn't really be any problems if watching autumn leaves falling had a different meaning.
I can smell water this way.
She said. Displaying the sharp sense of smell of a half-noble orc, Povina did more work than the swarms of spirits gathering around.
Going to the water should give some clues, shouldn't it?
Said Princess Levia. Like lizard men, Scylla were a race that needed to be near water. Of course, that didn't mean that all bodies of water would have Scylla living there, but they would at least get some clues.
I shall remain hidden nearby, then.
Said Princess Levia.
Please do.
Said Vandeleu.
Povina, where is the smell coming from?
It's over there.
Just in case, Levia erased her presence. Vandeleu followed Povina, who was following the smell of water. After a short while, they arrived at a small pond.
There aren't any Scyllosons, are there?
Said Povina, sounding disappointed. As she said, there were no signs of Scylla at this small marsh that was about 10 meters across.
But there is someone who used to be a Scylla.
Said Vandeleu. He could see the spirit of a Scylla.
It's not here, it's not here, it's not here.
The Scylla whispered. Her expression was terribly depressed, and she appeared to be searching for something with both of her hands and the tentacles of her lower body. She was apparently searching so frantically that she hadn't taken notice of Vandalu's demon path enticement skill. She was what is known as a Jibicure asterisk. It was the most ghost-like spirit that Vandalu had ever encountered.
What are you looking for?
He asked. As Vandalu spoke to her, the Scylla's spirit raised her face and was taken aback. And then her expression loosened as she gazed at him. The shadow of sadness that had been present in her expression had dramatically receded.
An important ring. I was only just given it and I went and lost it.
Deciding it was fine to show her to Povina, Vandalu cast visualization on the Scylla's spirit as it began talking. She told him that she was a Scylla by the name of Orbia, from a clan that ran a village near this pond. Scylla were an entirely female race, and Orbia had a secret relationship with a certain man. This man was a person who held a significant position in society, and their relationship could not be made known.
But he told me that he wanted to give me a symbol of our engagement and asked me to come out here alone, so I snuck out of the village. And then, right here, I received the ring from that person. I was so happy that I began to feel faint, and before I knew it...
You had died,
said Vandalu, finishing her sentence.
That's right, before I knew it, I turned into a ghost. That person was nowhere to be found and the ring was gone. And I didn't know what was going on.
You poor thing. You forgot what happened when you died, didn't you?
Said Povina.
It was painful when you realized that you died before realizing it, wasn't it?
Said Princess Levia. The three of them had experienced death before. They nodded in sympathy as they listened to Orbia's story.
Well then, I'll help you look for the ring,
said Vandalu.
Are you sure? I've searched for days and haven't found it, you know.
Said Orbi.
Yes, I have to divide first.
Divide? You're dividing.
Vandalu used out-of-body experience to multiply himself and searched everywhere, even inside the mud of the marsh. While he was doing this, Princess Levia and Povina were asking Orbia how she had died.
Do you have any idea as to when you died?
Princess Levia. There was the option of using mental encroachment, but there was a possibility of Orbia going mad and her mind crumbling if her memories were dug up forcefully, so it was best to ask her and have her remember.
No, I don't remember anything.
The appearance of ghosts were often influenced by how they appeared when they died. The spirit of a person who had been stabbed in the chest would have a knife protruding from their chest, so it would be easily to tell the cause of death in such a case, but Orbia had no external injuries. It was possible that the cause of death hadn't appeared on her spirit body, because she didn't remember how she had died.
I'm sure it happened in an instant,
said Povina.
You don't remember what happened before you died. Maybe something strange happened.
Now that you mention it, recently in a number of villages there have been incidents where Scylla have been getting attacked in places where they were alone and killed in horrible ways. Could it be that I was killed by the person responsible for that? This is terrible. What if that man was also put in danger?
Orbia exclaimed.
It's all right,
said Povina, reassuring her.
If that person's spirit was nearby, Van would have noticed.
That's right,
said Princess Levia.
I am sure that your precious person is safe. You're right,
said Orbia, regaining her composure.
That wouldn't necessarily have happened to that person.
Just as she finished speaking, all of Vandalu's clones returned to his physical body.
Unfortunately, I couldn't find your ring,
said Vandalu.
It was either stolen by the one who killed you or it's with your dead body, or perhaps that person has it.
I see, thanks for searching for it,
said Orbia.
With this, I can give up.
Suddenly, Orbia grew fainter. Now that she knew that her ring wasn't here, her lingering attachment had faded, and she was trying to return to the circle of transmigration.
Orbia Wanessen,
Povina whispered.
Please find happiness after you are reborn, all right,
said Princess Levia. The two of them watched her with sad expressions.
Yes, thank you,
Orbia said to them with a smile as she disappeared.
Excuse me, but it would be really helpful if you could lead me to the Scylla village.
Come to think of it, I didn't tell you where it is, did I?
Orbia came back before disappearing.
Also, do you have no intention of becoming an undead?
Asked Vandelue.
You'll be able to take revenge on the criminal with your own hands.
An undead, not really.
Orbia said.
I suppose I don't really care about revenge, and as long as that person is safe. But while I'm at it, I might want to confirm his safety for myself.
And so she easily agreed to stay with Vandelue. It seemed that she wanted to at least stay with him until she could make sure that her lover was safe.
I'm happy but conflicted.
Said Povina.
I kind of knew that things would come to this, though.
It is conflicting indeed.
Princess Levia agreed.
Though I did think that things would come to this.
The two of them, who had both been stopped from returning to the circle of transmigration by Vandelue, glared at him with reproachful eyes. Having undead insects deliver a message to everyone else who was waiting, Vandelue and his companions headed for the village that Orbia used to live in, following her light. The village was apparently in the marshes in the mountains.
This child is Vida's holy son. Amazing. Us Scylla have been worshipping Vida all this time, but none of us have this title.
Orbia exclaimed.
Phew fun, that's right.
Said Povina.
Van is amazing. And what about that person that you love, Orbia Wanachin?
I can't tell you his name.
Said Orbia.
But he's really cool, Tilda, especially when he flicks his bangs to the side like this.
Her lover was apparently a handsome person with characteristic bangs.
At this rate, it seems that we'll be able to identify her lover straight away.
Vandelue whispered. But as they were drawing closer to a river that lay between them at the village, they heard a piercing scream.
It could be that someone is being attacked.
Vandelue said.
You were so fast, but why are you using your hands to run as well?
Orbia seemed bewildered.
Because it's faster. Povina and Princess Levia, please follow me.
Without waiting for a response, Vandelue immediately began running on all fours towards the direction that the scream had come from.
That's probably not right, but it might be. Your tongue extended.
Vandelue used the unarmed fighting technique martial skill, tongue blade, to cut through the branches that were in the way. He kept running, deciding that he'd think about things after finding the one who had let out the scream. If they were being attacked by Orbi's murderer, he would have to make heavy use of magic, so he wasn't using flight. In fact, since he was traveling just to the nearby river, flying wouldn't have been much faster than running on all fours. Name Saria. Rank 7. Race Living Maid Armor. Level 49. Passive skills. Special 5 senses. Strengthened physical ability, level 6, level UP. Water element resistance, level 7, level UP. Physical attack resistance, level 6, level UP. Self-enhancement, subordinate, level 4, new. Active skills. Housework, level 4, level UP. Halberd technique, level 7, level UP. Coordination, level 4, level UP. Archery, level 5, level UP. Spirit form, level 7, level UP. Long distance control, level 7, level UP. Armor technique, level 6, level UP. Name Rita. Rank 7. Race Living Maid Armor. Level 51. Passive skills. Special 5 senses. Strengthened physical ability, level 7, level UP. Fire element resistance, level 7, level UP. Physical attack resistance, level 6, level UP. Self-enhancement, subordinate, level 4, new. Active skills. Housework, level 3, level UP. Naginata technique, level 7, level UP. Coordination, level 5, level UP. Archery, level 5, level UP. Throwing, level 7, new. Spirit form, level 7, level UP. Long distance control, level 7, new. Armor technique, level 7, new. Monster explanation. Living Maid armor. Saria and Rita have become these monsters after Vandelue added dark copper armor to them in the shape of frills and laces. It can be assumed that the likely conditions for becoming living maid armors are things such as possessing the housework skill, being someone's maid, and being suits of armor that appear maid-like. As there are no rank 6 living armor type, undead with the housework skill, that are aware that they are maids other than Saria and Rita, they are the first monsters of their kind to appear in Lambda. Thus, there is a high chance that adventurers seeing them would mistake them for strangely shaped living armors or living magic armors. It is not only combat abilities that receive bonuses. The housework skill receives bonuses as well, so they have the potential to develop into